So welcome back to another episode of the Ohio Bass Podcast. I'm your host, Nick. You can follow me on X, TikTok, or YouTube at Ohio_Bass, on Instagram at Ohio_Bass_Outdoors. You can email the show at theohiobasspodcast@gmail.com, and we're streaming on every platform, including Pandora, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Amazon Music, Audacity, TuneIn, YouTube, and more. So we have a great interview lined up as always, and we took a different direction this time. So all the previous guests we've had on before have been fishing from a boat or a kayak. Matt's a little different. The majority of the time, he is fishing from the shore for largemouth bass. And if you think about the percentage of Americans who are fishing every day, every weekend, I would say that most of them are fishing from the shore for largemouth bass. So we did a great job of talking about a lot of different topics. And if you're on a boat or fishing from a kayak, don't turn me off. All this information will still apply as well. So we talk about fishing in the winter, which is something I do too, but I usually shift my focus to muskie or steelhead, especially late in the year. And I asked him what his catch rate was like fishing in the winter, because targeting largemouth bass is something I typically stop doing late in the fall. And it was interesting, and I won't give it all away, but the catch rate was not bad, and most of it's because the fishing pressure is gone. I also asked probably my favorite question. What are some of your go-to baits in certain situations? And it's just fascinating to me, because you could ask 100 people that question and get 100 different answers. So during the interviews, because the guests are the highlight of the show, I typically don't break in and answer questions along with the guests at the same time, because I have this whole open where I can circle back around and recap certain talking points that I think are maybe the most interesting or go along with the interview the best. So I wrote down here, I think I should bring up some of my favorite baits in certain situations. So, trolling for muskie, one of my all-time favorite things to do. If I'm in 10 to 20 feet of water, going about 3 miles an hour, maybe 3.5, the 7-inch original floating Rapala. I typically go with 4 different colors. From day to day, one color may be better than the other. So typically, I tie on a Fire Tiger and a gold. I'll troll an area. If I don't have any hits, I'll switch out the gold for a silver, and I'll switch out the Fire Tiger for a perch. And the majority of the muskies that I have caught have come off that 7-inch floating Rapala. In Ohio, we have a white bass run in the spring, also one of my favorite things to do. The fishing conditions are a little difficult because typically the rivers are flooded and they're always super dirty. So my go-to bait for white bass is a Glow Pro Lure Micro Dancer. And here's how I rig it up. If you're familiar with the double fluke rig, this will be easy to visualize. So basically I'll take a swivel before I tie on any bait and put it on the line. Then I'll tie a white jig head with a white Glow Pro Lure grub. They're about 1.5 inches. Then on the swivel I will tie a line on probably about 1.5 feet, and then tie on another white Glow Pro lure. So if you don't have a white Glow Pro lure, any white grub will work, but I really think white is the way to go, especially when the river is super, super muddy. And basically you just cast it out and reel it in, and it looks like a tiny little school of bait fish. And I've tried to keep track. I've caught probably 50-50 on the main one and then on the leader one. So it's definitely a good idea to have both. For steelhead, I like to drift fish using a spinning rod, usually a 10'6", but sometimes an 8'6", and I'll use a beadhead nymph. The color of the beadhead would be a hothead or orange, and then the body would be a black or a really, really dark brown. Now I always tip those with spikes, sometimes wax worms, but I prefer spikes because they just stay on the hook longer. And then I just taper from smallest to largest split shots up to the float. And for me, that has been the most successful Lake Erie steelhead bait. So I'll try to give you one more here. It's been a long time since I fished for bass in a pond, but if you want to take your kids out or a coworker, your boyfriend, girlfriend, parents, you just want to have some fun catching bass in a smaller body of water, my go-to bait is the Mini King Strike King spinnerbait. They're super cheap. You can find them everywhere. Usually I'll go with the midnight black first. If that's not working, I'll switch it out with a lighter color, maybe a bluegill or a white. And they're so versatile. You can cast it out, let it sink. Now you're fishing the bottom. You can cast it out and immediately retrieve it. Now you almost have a topwater bait. They'll hit it when it's falling. They'll hit it halfway through the retrieve. They'll hit it a foot away from the shore. So next time you're at Walmart, head to the fishing section, buy every color of the Mini King, Strike King spinnerbait. You'll thank me later. All right, new company, YOLO Tech. What is YOLO Tech? Well, their catchphrase is always be recording. Their most popular product is called a power stick, which you can directly hardwire into your boat and mount any action camera to get non-stop recording without worrying about battery life. It's amazing. Everybody's been there. I've been there. A couple months ago, actually, I was just getting ready to pull up a giant flathead catfish and my GoPro died because the batteries. It's horrible. So what they did was they invented not only just a power stick to mount to your boat, they have power banks that you can plug in directly to your action camera, not just GoPro, and just get non-stop recording. It's fantastic. The battery life of these action cameras have not kept up with the technology as far as shooting. So the last thing you want is be on the water and have your camera die right at the moment you need it the most. And another great product they came out with is their sun shield. So probably the most popular reason why your camera will stop recording is because it overheats, and the sun shield helps prevent that. I actually wore it down to iCast. I had so many people come up to me, ask me what it was, ask me if it worked. They've never seen one before. So if you go to Instagram and go to Ohio_bass_outdoors, I have a direct link that will give you a discount, the YOLOtech.com. So go to Instagram, Ohio_bass_outdoors, click the link, the YOLOtech, and you will never have to stop recording. So that's all I have for an open. As always, I truly appreciate all the support. If you have a second, please give us a like, a comment, or a review on whatever app you're listening to us on. And with all that being said, let's hit it.
What have I got?
All right, let's head to the hotline presented by Deeper Sonar. Head to deepersonar.com to check out the Chirp 2, the world's most powerful, castable sonar. So, super excited to bring on a fantastic content creator, an awesome bass fisherman, and a great follow on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. His name is Matt Koser, but he's also known as Get Ugly Fishing. Matt, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. How are you doing on your end down there?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Super excited about this. And first, I just want to say I really appreciate you taking time out of your weekend to sit down and not just have a conversation with me about fishing, but the audience too.
No, I appreciate it. Anytime I get a chance to, people invite me to talk, I'm more than happy. I like to talk. I guess I have the gift of gab.
Great. That'll work out perfect then. In the beginning, I always like to ask the guests first, give us a little background. Let us know where you grew up, what you grew up fishing for, maybe what you're doing now, and I'll just leave it open-ended for you.
All right, so I actually grew up in Stowe, Ohio by Akron, and my grandpa lived in Sandusky, Ohio by Cedar Point. So if you guys know where Cedar Point is, you're going to know where Sandusky is. My grandfather was the one who taught me how to fish. We'd go down to Sandusky Pier, go perch fishing, and then, I started finding out there's things called bass. I started fishing for that, and as a kid, I'd be out fishing wherever I can find time to fish or whatnot. Got away from it in high school, college, whatnot, and the last, 15 years, I got back into it again, and here we are. But it was all pretty much because of COVID, too. I finally gotten done doing some boating stuff. I'm just at that point in life where I'm tired of doing it, wanted to do something different. So I started in this world, and Didn't think I'd get this far as I already have, and it's been a ride. Let me just say it that way. I fish a lot of different spots up here on Lake Erie, from shore fishing to being on the kayak to I get to go on the bass boats. That's a good time too.
Awesome. So, how many times a year do you think you fish?
Last year was 292 days fishing. This year I'm going to be right at 285, 286.
Wow, so it's almost all year. I was just going to ask you if it was seasonal or not.
No, because literally I live 5 minutes from East Harbor and West Harbor, from Lakeside, from the Lighthouse. So I have access to fish pretty much all over the place. And having the kayak, wintertime, if it's too rough or it's really nasty out there on East Harbor, West Harbor, I can pack the kayak up and go over to Rest Haven, which is in Castalia, Ohio. They got a bunch of big ponds and small lakes over there, and I will go fish that all winter long for bass.
Nice. So I know you like bass fishing, but do you fish for any other species?
Sometimes my boss, because I work at Highway Bait, those that don't know, they've seen some videos lately where I'm doing videos at work and whatnot. But I do go walleye fishing with a couple of them here and there, but I mostly just strictly stick to just bass fishing.
All right. So when you're fishing for bass, do you typically fish the same areas, or are you always looking for new locations?
That depends. It depends on the weather, what the wind's like up here. If I'm going to be in the kayak, or if it's going to be a shore day, or if I'm out on, one of the bass boats, my friends are all going different places. I have several different spots from shore. You've seen the one spot.
Yeah.
You were out there. That's actually one of the spots I do a lot of filming at because it's easy access to set up filming equipment, and also I know there's a lot of bass on that West Harbor side, so the stuff I throw, I can get the pictures, I can get the content, and a little bit easier that way than always running a bunch of cameras while you're on the kayak.
All right. Well, how do you approach new locations differently than you would, spots that you've been to before?
Well, if I got time, I'm going to look at a map. I'm going to pull up Google's Maps and they put it on satellite or real, photos that you can see. And I'll look at the lake or a pond or where I'm going at to see what that looks like. Then when I get there, it's all the water clarity, how cloudy the water is, and what I'm seeing around. I'm 51 years old. I've learned how to fish without having all the fancy equipment out there. No, don't get me wrong. I like the fancy equipment. The live scan, side scan. It's incredible stuff. But I've learned that you also have to pay attention to what birds are doing, what other things are doing. Look in the water. If you see, little minnows, what color are the minnows? If you see a bunch of crawfish, you're probably going to want to throw a creature bait. It depends if you want a Texas rigget or run a finesse worm or whatnot. Just depends on that. I take a lot of rods with me because I don't always like retying every single rod, so I pretty much have 8 rods with me at all times. I probably could boost it up a couple more just depending on the time of year. Like this year, for an example, spawn was early. It started like March 1st and stopped mid-April. And then we never had a dog days of summer. It was just that post-spawn all the way up to August.
Yeah.
So I didn't really need to take all my extra rods. So it was really around 6 rods was what I was normally carrying this year. My crankbait rod, which usually I put away by June. And then I still had all my flipping rods and finesse rods and so forth.
So you mentioned that you like the fancy equipment, and most of that fancy equipment is on boats. So what challenges do you face fishing from the shore without using that, and how do you overcome those?
Okay, now that's a big question. Okay, let's get into it. Live scope, for one, yes, it shows you the fish are there. You get in extreme detail if you're on the boat or if you have it on the kayak, same with side scan. So shore, you're guessing pretty much what's out there. Now, that being said, the few places that I fish on a regular basis from shore, I've been able to take a bass boat through there with live scope and side scan, and I got some hyper accurate scans through those areas. But if you're going to fish somewhere else that you never fished before, you're not going to really have that. So I'm pretty much trying to figure out what depth everything is. So you're pretty much guessing. First thing I'm going to do is run something weedless, just so I can feel the bottom, feel what's going on, and see if it's, a bunch of grass down there or lily pads or brush piles or something like that, because sometimes you can't see through the water. So you're pretty much guessing a lot of times, but keeping to the simple colors, pumpkin green, black and blue flake, some of the, like a little bit of red in there, you can get it pretty much on a regular basis.
All right, so this is kind of a similar question, but how do you locate fish from the shore? And once you get out there, what things are you looking for to help determine your bait selection?
All right, when you're looking from shore, and now if you're on Lake Erie, this changes from if you're going other places. So let's start off with you're on a stream. You're looking for that riprap. You're looking for spots that have eddies. You're looking for where the rocks that are sticking out that the slower water is behind it. That fish can stack up and grab a free meal as it's coming by. So you're gonna run baits through there. Like if I'm running down into a creek or a stream or something like that, I'm doing more Texas rigging or more flipping, running like a jig or Miko rig or a finesse worm through there, or even a Ned rig to get bit. And then, like if I'm doing it from Lake Erie, I'm looking at the currents. I'm also looking at to see what the water is doing around all the rocks, or if there's signs in the water, for port or starboard or which side of the channel's on, and seeing what that's doing. Because that sometimes determines which side the fish is on too.
Sure. Now, is that seasonal or all year round?
That's some of it is seasonal. Like if I'm fishing West Harbor, a lot of it can be seasonal, a lot of it can be all year round. Now, once December hits out there, like West Harbor, East Harbor, unless you're in the deeper water, and I'm not talking 20 feet of water, I'm talking 6 to 10 feet of water, you can do pretty good bass fishing out there. By that point, you're not really shore fishing. You're going to need to be out in the kayak, and you're going to need to be out in the boat. Now and then you can get lucky from shore, and you're going to catch one up shallow if it's a warmer day and the vegetation's still growing. At that point, they're going to go to the deeper channels, and you're kind of guessing really where you're throwing. So if you go somewhere that you don't know well, and you're seeing a lot of different things that you're not normally to, find something that you normally are confident in throwing. Whatever bait you use that's your confident bait, your go-to bait, I would start with that. But winter fishing is a completely different story than any other part of the fishing during the year. Like from, I'd say, another 2 weeks till, I don't know, maybe March, it's more crankbaits, more slower crankbaits, it's more finesse stuff, it's more swim baits, maybe a bladed jig here and there, just depending on the area I'm at, or jerk baits. Right now, I'm throwing a lot of jerk baits. Baits change, but some of it is just, you can throw all year long. I've caught stuff on curly tail worms in the middle of January. I've caught a fish on a frog just because I saw a fish popping out of the water. It was not last year, the year before that, where we had that warmer winter. Yeah. I seen some fish popping on the top of the water. I'm like, okay, so I had a frog with me, so I just threw it on for the heck of it. And I'm like, I did not have any of the throwing equipment that I have today that at that time. So I threw it out there. 1, nothing, 2, nothing. And I'm like, well, it's top water. I have to throw it for a little bit because once you start throwing top water, you got to throw it for a while. 10 casts in, bam, I get one. I'm like, it's January, right? I'm thinking the whole entire time, like, this is, you know what I mean? Yeah. You wouldn't think the top water hit's going to happen. But it did. But it was the water was probably 42 degrees, 43 degrees, but the grass was still growing because we had such a warm, sunny winter. The bass were still up in 4 feet, 5 feet of water, but in those grass beds. So anything I took the top of the grass beds, it would come out of there and hit it. So it's just a different thing. Winter fishing is completely different. I could talk for hours about winter fishing because it's really, you only need a couple poles. At that point, you're not throwing any braid because braid's going to freeze.
Well, what are some of your favorite winter baits?
It's going to be a crankbait. I usually run like rattle trap style lipless baits. I do like running a skinny jerk by culprit. I put that on it's like a jig head on there with a little rubber piece on the front. As you're pulling it through the water, it gives a vibration on the back of your sound like soft plastic. I always call it a plunger. I know there's another name for it, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. I mean, if not that, I'm running like a 6 to 7 foot crankbait, medium size, not really thick, but I'm running it slow.
Okay, so you're running it slow. I was just going to ask you what your cadence was on those crankbaits.
That really depends. The colder the water is, the more you want to slow roll your crankbaits. Now, a lot of people say, how do you slow roll a crankbait? You can. You're going to give a little jerk at the beginning, and once you start feeling that vibration in your crankbait, you do not go any faster. You're keeping it slow. So it's kind of just dipping down in the water and just going through there extremely slow through there, so it gives them time for a bite. Another good thing also on cold water is a jerk bait. And that cadence really just depends on the day and the sun and everything else. It could be a boom, 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 pause for, 30 seconds and then do it again.
Yeah.
Glide baits work extremely well in cold water. I've used a couple different kinds. I haven't really found one that I really like yet. Still kind of new to the glide bait world because I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole there. Jig's another one. Jig is a really good one to use during the wintertime too, or a shaky head, because you can drag the shaky head on the bottom, put a finesse worm on there, put a creature bait on there, and just work it on the bottom a little bit when it's sit, move it, will sit. I also go down in weight of my line in the wintertime too. 8 pound to 12 pound max in the wintertime.
Okay.
Just because the fish are not as powerful or just explosion. They're a little bit slower than they are during the summer months or spring or spawn or, where they have all this extra power and energy because they can get food constant. And the cold water slows them down quite a bit.
So because I've never fished for bass in the winter, how do you think the catch rate compares to warmer months?
Well, right now it picks up for me, at least up here, because it's not as pressured as much. And they're chasing all the Lake Erie shad. The shad's just crazy the last couple of days. We've been out minnow fishing lately to get shiners and stuff for people who are perch fishing still. And the shad is just, you could walk across it in some spots. I mean, that's how big the balls are right now. Like you'd be throwing an A-rig or, something that looks like shad to get bit. But once December gets around, you're not seeing as much shad. You may see some bigger shad. I would say normally, if I catch 2 in a day, I'm good.
Okay.
Now, if I'm in a bass boat, I'm going to catch a little bit more. But if I'm fishing from shore or if I'm fishing from the kayak, I try to stay where I'm not getting in trouble out there. That makes sense. I try to keep where I'm not so far offshore. Just for the fact of water temperatures dropping, yes, I have gear that I wear that keeps me safe, but still, I want to be to where I can get back in my kayak quickly.
Sure.
Get to shore, get dry, so forth, if something does happen. But that's why I like fishing at West Haven in the wintertime. It's a little easier to get in the shore if I need to real quickly.
Yeah.
But it does slow down quite a bit, because once summer hits, like the one time we were out fishing this spring on early spawn, I think we were 200, over 200 in a day within about 4 hours, just on beds.
Wow.
We were flipping beds and running weight baits. This year was all about weight baits for some reason. We still can't figure out why that was the key thing on everything this year.
Huh. Do you ever run into any steelhead on the main lake?
We do. There has been quite a bit this year from some of the walleye guys that I know. They've been telling me they're catching them while they're trolling. I've walked into a couple in West Harbor and East Harbor. A few weeks ago, there was a bunch that came by where I was fishing at, was heading out towards the main lake. So we do see them. They are getting better out there. I guess coho. Am I saying that word? Am I saying that right? Coho?
Yeah, I think so.
They're starting to make a comeback over by Huron in the deeper waters. So we did have one on the line. Was it 4 weeks ago? I had one on in West Harbor. I lost it. It snapped me off. I didn't. On my bait casters, I did not have my drag set. So I didn't get enough time to hit my thumb on there to use my thumb on the spool. So I had it, but it broke me off. But we could definitely see it was a coho.
Nice.
So they're there. There's a lot of sturgeon now too. So I have not locked into one of those, but I have seen them.
So let's talk about the elements for a second. Are there certain things when you get out there that are more important to you? And I'm speaking of like maybe moon phases or water level, water temperature, water clarity, wind direction, cold fronts, things like that.
One thing I've learned up here, though, if we got a storm coming, and this is where I caution everybody very carefully to listen and not do. Maybe do, but get out of there before the lightning starts. They tend to pick up right before it rains, right before the storm. For some reason, it drives them nuts. They turn into a speeding frenzy. Everything is moving around. That's a good time when I race out there to get some more footage, get some more stuff, because it's just going to be epic at that point. It almost doesn't matter what you're throwing; they're going to hit it because of the pressure that's coming.
Interesting.
And then I've also noticed that the more wind we have in the current, the bigger the bass are going to be. The bigger the big bass up here tend to not come out to play unless it's really bad conditions. They're lazy to begin with because they're getting big. They like the current. They like when there's different currents because the bait fish are going right by them, and they can get a free meal out of that real easily. They're not spending so much energy up here, I've noticed. So I have learned how to cast into the wind with a bait caster without backlashing as much. Yes, I still bait. I'm still backlash like everybody else does. But casting into the wind and then bringing it back to you gets you bit a little bit more than casting with the wind because the fish are turned into the wind anyhow. So they're seeing the bait instead of a instant strike or reaction strike as it comes by them when you're casting with the wind. So the heavier the currents are up here in certain spots, sometimes it's a little better because you're getting that heavier bass. The bigger ones will come out more often than just when it's just regular, nice day, a little bit windy. Flat water can be a problem if there's not a lot of wind because you're going to just kind of run top water on that point. You really want to make some noise or run some finesse stuff across the bottom, drag it on the bottom, Carolina rig. I like a little wind, but not too much. Like yesterday, I was out fishing in the 35-mile-an-hour wind, caught 10 bass. Nothing to brag about. They were all like 2 pounds, 3 pounds on a swim bait, but I literally had to cast a certain direction so I knew my lure was going to land where I wanted it at. I was 10, 15 degrees casting differently, knowing that my lure from the wind was going to blow that hard and over to where I wanted to land at. So that's a whole another subject because that takes a little while to learn. I've broken a lot of crankbaits that way.
All right, so I would say the majority of Americans probably fish for bass, and they probably fish from the shore, and they're probably fishing highly pressured areas. So, do you have any advice for people that are fishing from the shore for bass in those situations?
If you're fishing pressured from a lot of spots, you need to go what a lot of people are using as if they're fishing with a bobber. And I'm not talking about using live bait. I'm talking about making sure the lures or soft plastics matches the hatch, so to say. Let's go with earthworms, like night crawlers that you use for walleye. You're out just putting some worms on a bobber and you're throwing it out because there's a lot of pan fishermen out there. There's a lot of people that will fish around bobbers around you. If you're using a finesse worm or a creature bait that's like pumpkin green or night crawler color in those high pressure areas, your chances of getting bit rise extremely high because they're conditioned to those colors from the different worms. Now, that being said, a Ned rig's not a bad idea. I don't like throwing them. I throw them, but they're just not something I'm always a big fan of. It works well, and I do use it quite a bit. It's one of those weird techniques that I just don't know about. Sometimes finesse fishing, when it's pressured, is going to get you a bit more than everything else. So learning how to deco rig or wacky worm, especially when you got, let's say, where I like to fish at mostly, we get a lot of pan fishing, and then it can be packed from one end to the pump house to the other side. I'll walk further down just to get away from them all and fish, a little bit deeper, a little bit differently than they are. But I'm learning a lot of finesse techniques. Wacky is one of them. Deco rig is another one. Drop shot is a really good one that you should have that skill honed in. That works all year long. Cold water, warm water, windy days. You just got to change out your weight on the bottom for a little bit heavier if the current's moving or the wind is just one of those things. But finesse fishing is going to get you bit a little bit more in those conditions.
Nice. So I know that you like to take a lot of different rods with you. Can you walk us through some of your favorite setups as far as the reel, line, rod combinations?
All right, yeah, the lines I've been using for the last couple of years is P-line. Actually, one of my partnerships is with P-line. I use a lot of their CXX. Now, that's like $9.99 for 300 yards. It's their fluorocarbon with a little bit of mono mixed in with it. It works extremely well around rocks. So if you're fishing from shore and you're out at rocky conditions, this stuff takes a beating. If you're using straight braid, a lot of times around rocks, it's just going to cut right away and it's snapping off. But when it comes to braid, I'm using the P-line braid for in the weeds and whatnot. But it comes down to what the line works for you. A lot of people like Berkeley. I do use some Missouri line, but most of the time it's going to be P-line. It's going to be the 100% fluorocarbon and some Cincinnati. That's a leader line. If I need to change up to something a little bit heavier than what I have, let's say I'm running 12-pound fluoro and I really need 17 on there, I'll put a leader line and attach it to that and go from there. Just so the snap back when I set the hook, it's not popping my line off. But okay, let's get down to the rods and reels. Most of the time, my rods are all anywhere from 7 foot. Well, I should say 7 foot. 6'9" to 7'4". I have a 7'6" coming for my crankbaits. I have a medium heavy, a medium, and then I have a heavy for some of my bigger glide baits and frog fishing. That rod only really comes out if I'm frog fishing or if I'm on the kayak and I know I'm going to be in some really nasty stuff. My heavy rod comes out. That has nothing but braid on it. If I need to put a leader on, I will, but the majority of the time it's straight braid on that rod. And I have a 7.2 reel on there by Abu Garcia. And all my rods are Abu Garcias or their Pro Series. I have a couple of Versata, I think that's how you say it. It's just Abu Garcia works for me. It may not work for you, and that's something I've talked about recently. We were talking about rods and reels, and someone said how much they like their loose rod. And I have no problem with that. If it works for you and the gearing's for you and that rod performs for you, then that's what you need to go with. Are there a difference between rods? Somewhat, yes, but when you spend more money for a rod, it doesn't always mean it's better. Yeah. I know I'm probably going to get some hate for that.
So, yeah, I was once told that I ruined Christmas because I bought a $300 rod, and turns out it was no better than the $150 rod I already had.
No, that's the thing. I got one from the TikTok shop, okay, by Handing Fishing. It's a spin rod, and they sent me the spin reel and all this with it. It's the 7.2. No, I'm sorry, 7.1. This thing is more sensitive than my Abu Garcia drop shot rod, and that's a $300 rod. This thing was way better, worked better. I felt more of the bumps. I felt more of the lighter hits on it for being an $80 rod over some of the other ones. Now, I do have some of the Berkeley Lightning rods. I really like those, and we are selling those at Highway Bait now finally too. But I did find a loose, I think I showed you that while you were out there. I found a loose rod and reel combo baitcaster. I snagged it out of the water. It was in front of the pump house. I thought I had a fish on, pulled up. It's hardly used. It's a 7.5 reel. Took it home, took it completely apart. Now this is a baitcaster reel. It's the 7.2. Took it apart, and that thing's in my hand more than half of my other rods. It's just funny. The free rod turns into be one of my main rods. I use it for crankbait just for the fact it's a 7.5. I normally like to run my crankbaits in the 7.2, 6.8 around, for gear ratio, but the 7.5 seems to be where I get the most bit at. Because I can slow it down, or I can speed it up very quickly, or I can pause it. So it seems to be pretty good. But it doesn't matter if you're using a Lewis rod, if you're using a Walmart rod, if you're using a Zepco. If it works for you and you have it set up right, it's just whatever you can afford and whatever works for you is what it comes down to. I've had arc rods, I've had St. Corey's, I've had a bunch of different ones, but I've settled on the Abu Garcia. It just seems to be what works most of the time for me.
All right, so this is one of my favorite questions. What are some of your favorite baits in certain situations?
Oh, that's going to be a little bit of a tough one because there's a few that I just... All right, the Fat Max. Fat Max is made by Culprit. It's a thicker worm, curly tail worm. Now, real quick story on that. If you guys do not know what Culper is, go to culper.com. Check it out. They are the original company to do lamination. They're the first company ever to mass produce a two-color worm. They actually got the patent on it back in the day. So check that out. But their Fat Max is a thicker curly tail worm. Now, I like taking that in a little bit of windy conditions with a 1/4 ounce weight on it. Number 4 offset hook, sometimes number 3, but 4 is better of the spear point hooks because it's thicker. It's a thicker worm. 7.5, or I'll run a 6-inch or a 7.5, and throw that through the lily pads, right on the rock lines, especially late spring to middle of summer, because they're still looking for that bigger bite. But when it's just one of those things. It gets a little windy. I have that in my hand because that thing just gets bit. It's a really good move around bait because I can also throw it on a shaky head if I want to. I can cut it down a little bit and put it on the back of a jig. So it's just, that's one of my go-to bases, the Fat Max. It's just a thicker worm. I don't really run a whole lot of speed worms, which I probably should, but I don't run them as much as I used to, since the Fat Max has gone a couple different sizes now from what it originally was. They even make a 9-inch one. The thing's just a monster. We do catch bass in Ohio on 10-inch worms and 12-inch worms. I had somebody ask me, "Oh, we don't have bass big enough to catch, have 12-inch worms." Well, bass will hit twice the size of his body for a bait if it's struggling in the water. So go ahead and throw the 12-inch, 10-inch worms.
So, do you have any underrated baits or maybe less popular plugs that you use that you never see anybody else throw?
Yeah, funny story about that. Okay, so being on TikTok, you get so many followers, whatnot, they start sending you free products to make videos for the TikTok shop. And there's a company called TrueSend that makes like generic baits. So they sent me some articulated glide baits. It has a bunch of links in it, and it moves really weird and works phenomenal. You don't see a whole lot of people with these baits, and they just sent me the swim baits with a magnetic on the bottom, and it's got 2 hooks instead of 3. So they sent me these. I'm like, okay, these things aren't going to catch anything. It's just completely underrated. This is just not going to work. I had to put a nail weight in it to make it work. Well, yesterday when I was fishing and catching all those fish, it was all on a $20 pack of baits that I just got. That was a completely generic company and just kind of one of those off-the-wall baits, but it worked extremely well. I was actually impressed. I might have to get some more of those. But yeah, there's a lot of different ones like that. Like sometimes you can go to Walmart and find their spinner baits. This is another example. Their dollar spinner baits, as long as you trim up their skirts, are actually pretty decent. But I also run trailer soft plastics off all my spinner baits, but that's another conversation when it's just some spinner baits. But yeah, like the TrueScent and like some of the generic stuff is not too bad. Now, there are bad crankbaits that if you buy that will not run straight, even if you go to straighten them out or adjust them, they don't work well because they're made bad, they're poured wrong, or they've got too much heat during paint, so they're warped. If you get something for Christmas, you're gonna go try it. Might as well. And I don't, if I lose it, I'm not gonna cry over it. But yeah, there's some like TrueScent. I would say definitely TrueScent's one of the ones I was kind of impressed with. I wasn't expecting the quality of bite that I got from it because the plastic seemed to be too soft. A little too much elastic in it. It's not like Z-Man. Z-Man's got their elastic down pat. That I can't argue with them on that. But this was really, what's the word I'm looking for? It was different. The hits were good. The hookup ratio was good. I didn't lose a fish on it. And I'm really surprised because usually when I hook set, it's a pretty nasty hook set. And either I'm flipping them up out of the water if they're small, but these ones were, the hook set pretty good, didn't bend. So definitely worth looking at.
All right, so I'm going to put you in a situation. So you're going to fish a place for the first time without being able to see it. You can only take 3 baits with you. Which ones are you picking?
3 baits, new area that I've never fished before. I've never got to look at it. I don't get to look at any information.
Correct.
I'm going to take a T-Rex finesse worm, green pumpkin, Texas rig. I'm going to take my wacky rig pole because I can take the finesse worm and put that on there. And then I'm probably going to take a jig with me, just a regular finesse jig, 3/8, half ounce. Just the easy way to see what's in there, because you're going to get bit on a finesse bite. Could be crappie. I've had that happen. We have perch at crankbaits this year, so yeah, those would be the three that I would try. Normally, I would take a curly tail with me, but finesse worm you can do a lot more with.
Yeah.
And the presentation on it, you can do a little bit different than, curly tail worm. I'm really good with the curly tail worm. But the finesse worms are definitely the way to go. If I've never seen anything, that's the first thing I'm probably throwing.
So you're out fishing and you're getting skunked. You're not having any luck. Do you have a slump buster? Do you have any advice on, how to switch it up a little bit?
See, this happens to all of us. We were just talking about this on one of the lives on TikTok the other night. So you're out fishing, you're getting stressed out, you're getting mad, you're going through your whole entire tackle box. Everything is everywhere. You need to stop at that point and sit down. Seriously, stop and sit down. Take a breather, take a deep breath. Go to your confident bait. What are you good? What is the best bait that you throw that you always catch something with? Or every time you throw it, you're going to at least get bit once or twice. You need to stop what you're doing. Grab the bait that you normally use that you're very good at. Start throwing that. And I've been in this situation so many times, it's not even funny. Where I get frustrated, I'm not catching anything, and then I take a second. I remember my own words I just told you guys. And I take a minute, relax. I'll throw a curly tail worm on. I've grown up with curly tail worms, so that's one of my go-to baits. It's my confidence bait. Same thing with a finesse worm. So I'll throw a curly tail worm on, and I'll just start flipping and pitching it, start working it, and then once I start getting bit, I go from there. But the color-wise, I'm just going to throw is green pumpkin, because green pumpkin is kind of that color that works all year long, and really in any kind of water. So, and it's one of these with the green pumpkin color. It's one of those colors I still don't completely understand.
Yeah.
To me, it's an only green color. And I know there's stuff in the water that looks green, but I just don't understand why that color works better than some of the other ones overall. It is what it is, and it gets bit. So I would say you got to definitely stop, take a breath, put your stuff down, walk away from it for a minute. If you're on the boat, stop, go sit down. I've seen guys in tournaments completely lose it. I've seen guys on TV shows completely lose it. I've seen guys I've been out fishing with that are pros just have a complete meltdown because they're not catching anything. I've done it. They've done it. Everybody's done it. It gets to your head. It gets in your head. And you just got to remember, you got to calm down. You got to relax. Now, it's a little easier for me because I've done sports all my life. So I've learned, if things are starting to fall apart, we got to slow down, or we got to regroup, or sometimes it gets the best of me. I'll be switching stuff left and right constantly, and then I'll finally just like, man, forget it. I'm going home. And then I'll be like, I'm going to do one more cast. And I'll grab my rod with my curly tail worm on it, and I get bit. I land a fish. So it happens. Nice. You just can't lose your mind when it happens, because you're going to go down that rabbit hole, and you're going to start losing lures. You're going to start getting mad. You're going to break your line. Stuff adds up quickly when you start losing $12 and $15 and $20 crankbaits, or glide baits start at $10, and then you're running $1,000 glide bait, and you lose it. That one's gonna hurt.
So you follow a lot of fishing accounts, just like me. What are some of the things that you see anglers doing wrong?
I'm gonna bring up a story from this summer that was kind of funny. I'm out fishing at the pump house, and now everybody's going to hear that I fish at the pump house, and I do fish that a lot because it's literally 5 minutes down the road for me. So if it's windy, I got 2 hours to fish, so that's where I'm going to go. There was a person there, had a spin rod. It was a saltwater spin rod, and it was flipped upside down. Are you guys following me on this so far? So it's flipped upside down. They're using the lure through the weeds. That's the treble hook that should not be doing that. So I walk by once, and I see him still struggling. I walk down there. He's like, do you need some help with this? And he's like, well, yeah, I need to learn how to do this. And I'm like, well, can I show you a few things? He goes, yeah, this thing just won't cast. So I flip it over, so the reel's on the bottom. I changed his lure out to a soft plastic form. I had some with me, so I just hooked him up with that. I cast it way out there. He's like, "Oh, the guy at the store told me I got to do it this way." I was like, "What store did you go to?" Yeah, I was like, "You know, Walmart guys up here, they fish. They know their stuff." That may be not, all Walmarts, but all Walmart here these guys know their stuff. Most of them know their stuff. I try not to laugh. I'm glad I left my video camera where it was at because I would almost have to tape it at that point. But I helped him out. He got it fixed. But yeah, I see a lot of stuff done differently, or I see people say this is like the best knot there is, or this knot's the best there is, and I stick with just a couple knots. I don't really get fancy with them. Powder knot, I tie about that on about everything. Slip knot and some other stuff, just depending on what I'm fishing. But yeah, knots is the biggest one I see, and you'll see 1,000 views on it or 1,000 likes. I'm just like, he must be pushing that post. And I push posts down, but I do it more on TikTok than I do over on Instagram or whatnot. But some of the stuff you see, you're just like, really? And you want to say something, but you want to be rude at the same time. And you got to remember, you have a fishing account. You represent companies, so you're trying to behave at the same time. If that makes sense. It's a well delegated dance some days.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. So, do you have any key items that you take with you that are not necessarily for fishing itself, but kind of help you out? It could be anything from like a book bag to boots, a favorite knife, water bottle, things like that.
My backpack goes everywhere with me. I have a Batum tackle backpack. That's another sponsor of mine. I always have my pliers with me and my scissors. Doesn't matter if I'm just going to go a little bit fishing. Those two things are always with me. I'm a little superstitious when it comes to fishing. For a while there, I thought if I didn't have a certain clothing on, I wasn't going to catch any fish. And the days I was catching fish, I had like certain shoes on or a certain shirt. And I know this is going to sound weird, but superstition in fishing is really a big thing. But it really wasn't that. It's just my skill level just needed refreshed on a bunch of stuff, and then I was fine. But yeah, as in going everywhere, I always have my sunglasses. I always make sure I have my scissors. I have my pliers. I've literally been shore fishing somewhere, and I've walked back to my truck because I forgot it. I won't finish until I have them there.
Yeah.
I packed up my stuff, all my camera gear, and walked back, half mile to the truck just to go get them because I could cut them with my pliers and other stuff, but it's just not the same as having my scissors there or having my nut with me or some just basic stuff. So getting a hat, that throws me off. I have done that a few times. And not having an extra one in the truck, which I usually do. And the one day I cleaned my truck out, I forgot to take a hat back with me.
So sunglasses is a big one for me, and it's not just because it makes you look better in pictures, it's totally a safety thing. I can't tell you how many times I've had hooks and split shots and baits come back and ricochet and hit my glasses. God forbid, it only takes one time for something to hit you in the eye.
Yeah, having sunglasses on and making sure they're, the NSA safe thing or whatever it is important. Polarized glasses is a must for fishing. I've gone through 4 pairs of sunglasses this year just for the fact of having stuff come flying back at me. A snag or, fish split and go or whatnot. And I've had one hit my hat. I've had it hit my glasses. Sticking out of the storm too long before it's stored, and then you gotta kind of like bunker down until it passes. So having stuff flying through the air is a good time to have a pair of sunglasses. That was a funny story. Should not have been out there that day. But yeah, it's important to have sunglasses with you, and because it relaxes your eyes, plus you're protecting your eyes from the sun. A lot of times I have short sleeve shirts on, but there are days that I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt because you really should protect your whole body while you're out fishing. If you're out in the sun all day like I am, having water with you, having sunblock or a sun shirt. I have a bald head, so I have to have a hat, or it does get sunburn on the top. And I'm telling you guys now, it is not fun. Especially once it starts peeling, it's nasty. So, You can just imagine. It just, yeah. But yeah, it is, sunblock and stuff like that. You guys got to really, really think about nowadays. But yeah, sunglasses is another one I would definitely have to take with me, and a hat. But there's four items: sunglasses, hat, and good pair of pliers and my scissors. And it's you want a pair of scissors that's sharp enough to cut braid the first time, not three times. If you're cutting a lot of braid, you need to find a scissors that's specifically made for braid, because they will dull extremely quickly for those $5 like Rapala ones, or they buy those little cheesy ones, and they work well. Don't get me wrong. You're $5 at stores, Walmart, whatever bait shop that you're at. Everybody sells them, and they work well, but they dull out very quickly. So getting a good pair of $20 pair of scissors is gonna make your life a lot better in the long run for cutting braid, for cutting mono, for cutting floral. Because like as bass guys, we're constantly tying on our lures. We're not using a fast clip. We're not using a little clip like they do for walleye fishing or some of the other ones. We're tying directly. So we do go through a little bit more line than most people because we're cutting them off, re-spooling and whatnot. But having a good pair of scissors is a really good thing.
Okay, so I wanted to get into this real quick. You speak at a lot of fishing conventions. How did you get into that?
Last year, actually, the Great Lakes Fishing Expo, Blue Rock, Justice, another sponsor of mine, Blue Rock Jigs out of Ohio, Blue Rock Custom Tackle, invited me to come up and speak up there. So I went up there. I was basically the guinea pig for the first time speaking up there. So I had to make sure all the equipment was working as I'm talking, and that was my first one. So we had a screen. So I had some stuff up there so people could see, and it was a pretty decent crowd. But I ended up turning it into more of, okay, let's see what you guys want to hear about. So I turned a lot of my stuff into, let's take questions from everybody as I'm speaking. Yeah, I have stuff I would like to talk about, but I want to hear what you guys are interested in and what you guys want to learn. And that seemed to turn out pretty good. Now, I was supposed to speak at the, what is it, the other one Columbus? That was in Cedar Point. Yeah, the Columbus show that was in Cedar Point. And the expo, yeah. And the turnout was, for the first year, not a lot of people knew about it. Nobody ended up speaking that weekend, but I am going to be speaking down at the Columbus show. So that's going to be really cool. I'm going to be on a radio show next week. So it's just one of these things. I've been asked to do this or podcast here, or it's kind of like, okay, this is what we're doing now. I'm just a guy who fishes. I don't do a lot of tournaments. I do a lot of content creating for the partnerships that I have. I've been with Culprit for going on 6 years. Wow, that's a long time. I've been with Culprit for going on 6 years, and I've also used Culprit since I was a kid because they've been around that long. I've been with Blue Rock for 1 year, P-Line for 1 year, Batum now going on 2 years. That's a clothing brand. Spear Point Hooks is going on a year now, going on a second year with Spear Point Hooks. Fishing AF. I've been with them for 5 years. The clothing brand. And yes, you guys can all figure out what the AF stands for. But their t-shirts, I'm actually wearing a Fishing AF t-shirt right now. You guys can't see it, but I got it on. Their clothing is really good. So it's just been one of these things that just happens to work out. Now, I do have a cleaning product that I got sponsored for this year, and that was really kind of a weird thing. So let's talk about that sponsorships if you don't mind doing that one.
No, not at all. Actually, that was one of my final questions here. Do you have any sponsors or shout-outs?
Yeah, I'll get to more here in a second. But yeah, okay, so we got Turbo Towels. It's out of Cleveland. It's a cleaning product. It's like Lysol wipes, but for mechanics and whatever you want to do. This stuff cleans everything. I kid you guys not. So I'm on TikTok, and I see this post that, hey, we're looking for these sponsorships. We're looking for quality people of this, that, and whatnot, and so forth. And I applied for it. And, I'm on Twitter, YouTube, which I don't do a whole lot with right now. I have a fan page on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And I do pretty good talking on my lives and videos and so forth. So, and they give it to me, and I'm just like, okay, now how am I gonna do videos for this stuff? Because I had no idea. So I literally come up with like the craziest things, like cleaning my tennis shoes, wiping paint off stuff. I don't always grease monkey stuff, but I mean, I can do mechanical work. I'm pretty good at it, but I'm fishing all the time, so I'm wiping down my fish oils and this stuff, and it's working out pretty good for them. So I'm feeling it's going to be another year with them too, and so that's been a little bit different this year. I've had a little bit more of the sponsor stuff, especially with Batum. I can't get into my contracts because of NDAs, and prefer not to. But like I said, I have Spear Point hooks, Batum, Culprit, Blue Rock Custom Tackles, Fishy AF. I know I'm missing a one. P-Line. Sure, I'm missing one. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But
Do you have any promo
I just I do, but I don't have them all sitting in front of me right now. Give me a second. I can pull them up and tell everybody. Blue Rock Custom Tackle. You're gonna go to BlueRockCustomTackle.com and put in "Get Ugly Fishing" with a capital G, and that gets you 10% off on your any kind of tackle you order from Blue Rock. Batum, which is a clothing brand, you're going to go to Amazon.com and you're going to put in Matt Koser, all caps 20, and you're going to get 20% off on your Amazon order for Batum only. It does not work for everything else. Culprit is Matt K10, that's culprit.com. Remember, Culprit is the original soft plastic company besides Gary Yotomoto. It was Gary Yotomoto, Culprit, I think Jawtech, and then Berkeley came out later in the 80s. And Spear Point hooks, the discount code for them is they literally give everybody a 10% discount. When you log onto their website, you'll see a code. That's just, and if you ever use Spear Point hooks, you won't go to any other hooks. I do not lease hook sites, talk about hooks at those. Oh, Fishing AF is Get Ugly Fishing in all caps. And you guys can get 15% off with Fishing AF for the orders on there.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. So we're kind of getting up against it here, but I wanted to ask a few more quick questions. Can you give some advice for people who maybe are just now getting started bass fishing?
You do not need to spend a bunch of money. Let me point this out here. Find used lures at yard sales there for bass. Find, can you get away with a spin rod for quite a while before you're going to want to go to a bait cast reel. You just need to learn the basics. When I mean basics, you're going to need to learn to pitch, flip, and skip. And you can do a lot of that. I can do it with my spin rod, but I'm a northern person. Us northern people, we tend to fish more with spin rods than we do with bait casters. I really don't understand there's a whole divide between the southern and northern when it comes to this. It must be just one of those things. Really? But just work on pitching around the docks, pitching around, or, fishing around there. Trying some soft plastics. YouTube, there's so many people out there showing how-to videos. You can learn bass fishing from a lot of videos. Save it on your phone, so if you're out there, you can pull it up. I do answer a lot of questions, too, that I get messaged on my Instagram or TikTok or X, which is Twitter. I do answer messages on there, so if you got questions about fishing, I will answer them. If I don't know the answer, I know people that do. And we'll make sure they get a hold of you and explain things or say, hey, this guy does this video, let me send you a link for it. But when it comes to basic bass fishing, you're just going to go out and literally it's just practice. The more you fish, the better you get. I know a few people that weren't that good at the beginning, and once they started fishing a lot more and was fishing a lot, they got better at a lot of techniques. It's going to be frustrating because it's bass fishing. You may catch a little one, or you catch a big one. A lot of times you're catching a bunch of dinks now. That being said, I think every pounder is a dink, but if you're catching a little 12-inch, that's probably a dink. But being on Lake Erie, we do catch a lot of 3 and 4 pounders. 3-pounder, 2.5 pounder is a dink to us up here. But that doesn't mean elsewhere that's what it is. That may be a decent fish for other people. Yeah. So don't get frustrated. It's really a process. You're just going to learn, and then once you really want to get frustrated, buy yourself a bait caster that you never worked before. Because if you don't set it right off the bat, it's going to backlash. You're going to cast it in the wind, or you're going to put the wrong line on it. I know people that bought a brand new bait caster and put braid on it, backlash within 2 minutes. And probably should have just put some mono on it to learn, and they just thought it would be better to put braid on it right away. And sometimes you can't get the bird nest out of it, so you're cutting line, and if everybody's had to cut that much braid, I've done it, everybody else has done it, it's not fun. So just you don't have to spend a lot of money at the beginning. Get yourself a $50 bait caster, rod and reel. But I will suggest do not go with the 6-footers for the bait casters. Go with at least a 7-foot. Big difference in casting and retrieving and being accurate in your pitching, flipping, and casting once the 7-foot comes into play. 6-foot, unless you're 8-year-old kid, 6-foot's probably fine. But as the older you get, you're going to want that 7-foot pole or bigger. The accuracy is a lot better. You're hitting your targets a lot easier and almost right on every time. I'm not sure what the magical number is with the 7-foot, but it works extremely well.
All right, awesome. So do you have any closing thoughts, any topics or things you want to bring up that maybe we didn't discuss?
I will say this year has been a little different from all the rest. I try to keep some notes and stuff like that on how fishing goes for me, so I know next year got an idea what colors are coming. This year started off really weird by spawn being early, and then it went into that post spawn that I was telling you about earlier in this conversation. I think I finessed it more this year than I ever have in my entire life of fishing, and I don't know if it was due to fishing pressure or if it's just the weather pattern we had this year was completely weird. It was hot, and water quality on Lake Erie has gotten a lot better. And I think in some of that, I think the water quality had to play a lot of it into it, where finesse fishing's what was going to get you bit. And I never took a crankbait off my rod this whole entire year, and that usually does never happen. It's just been a different year than years past. I don't know if it's just because I know finesse fishing gets me bit more, or it was just everything just seemed to be off. Spawn threw it off. I think that's what it was. Spawn was so early that it just threw everything off. That would be my closing thought. This year's fishing has definitely been weird. The fishing industry has been changing very rapidly this year. We didn't even touch bases on all that. That's been going on in all the different competitions and different leagues and all that. That's all changing rapidly right now. Things are just changing, but we're just as bass guys, people who fish for bass, we learn to adapt to the situation pretty quickly. But I would say, hopefully this coming year, because supposedly we're supposed to get a colder winter, which would be nice because we kind of need that water to settle down for once. Maybe a little better next year. I wasn't seeing the quality of big bass that I normally do. And there could have been a lot of factors in that, but this year I didn't average as many 5-pound, 6-pound, 7-pound bass as I did before. And I'm not 100% sure why.
I actually 100% agree with what you said, and I'm really glad you said it because I was also thinking the same thing. What a weird year. I have probably had the worst bass fishing season in the last 10 years as far as numbers and size.
No, middle harbor is completely drained. That's a whole other topic for a whole other conversation too. But we did catch two boatmen in there the other day, just messing around in there, that were teetering on the 40-inch side. We definitely could have easily broke the state record a few times the other day. Literally, we were just messing around because nothing was hitting except for those. So the guys that were out there, we just started messing around with that and having fun, just getting them to bite. And they were monsters, I will say that. And they're fun to catch. You just gotta watch their teeth.
Yeah.
Do not whip both in. You will lose a finger. Just telling that to everybody because I know people that are just not thinking, and that's one fish you do not just grab it behind its head and you'll be all right. And they're feisty too, so.
All right. So how can people follow you?
All right, you guys can follow me on Instagram at Get Ugly Fishing. I have a blue check mark, so you guys can find me. It says Matt Koser, aka Get Ugly Fishing. Same Get Ugly Fishing on TikTok. Twitter, it's Get Ugly Fishing. I have a blue check mark on Twitter also. I have a fan page, Get Ugly Fishing, all one word, I think it is on Facebook. It's Get Ugly Fishing, all one word on Facebook. It's just a fan page. Everything from my Instagram goes over there.
All right. Well, let me say again, I truly appreciate you taking the time to sit down and have a conversation with me, doing it in a public setting. So help people. And the whole program is based around fishing, talking to other anglers out there, and learning new things and sharing information. So thank you for doing that. You did an awesome job. I totally recommend everybody going out and giving you a follow on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So let's all give it up one last time for Matt Koser, a.k.a. Get Ugly Fishing. Matt, thank you for taking the time, my friend.
Well, I appreciate you having me on there. It was a good time, and thanks for having me on.